My name is Heide Hackman, and as CEO of the International Science Council, I am honored to formally open this webinar on behalf of both the Council and the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis, IIASA. For the first phase of our work, the initial results of which will be presented to you today, we chose to focus on identifying transformations within reach in 4 critical systems: food and energy, governance, and science. Our approach was to mobilize knowledge and expertise from within and beyond the global scientific community, engaging thought leaders and decision makers from policy, the private sector, and wider publics in a global network of transformative dialogue, mutual learning, and problem solving. Colleagues, COVID-19 has thrown a spotlight on the role of science in society in ways that are unprecedented in our lifetimes. And science has, for better or for worse, stepped into that spotlight boldly and bravely, with rapid responses from across the spectrum of scientific fields and from scientific communities from all parts of the world. The message of transformation is consistent across most of this work.
As you've heard, a global, science-led, multi-sectoral consultation process has started with a view to harnessing the key learnings of the pandemic world in which we currently live, with the aim of prioritizing areas for transformative action that can address the complex challenges that lie ahead. Basically, recovery presents us with 2 broad alternatives: reverting back to business as usual, or transformation towards a resilient, just, and sustainable future. The risks associated with business as usual are very real. The SDGs, Paris Agreement, are likely out of reach. Business as usual will mean more inequality, increases in poverty and hunger, potential for conflict over resources, vulnerability to future pandemics, economic, environmental risks, and even political instability. Business as usual is not a real option. It would further lock in an unsustainable pathway towards tipping points of cascading crises. B, the rewards associated with transformations within reach are a more equitable, resilient, and robust society living within planetary boundaries. A resilient and sustainable future requires international collaboration, solidarity, fiscal support to advance a more equitable society, strengthening social safety nets, enabling an environment of retraining new skills with a focus on green and inclusive economy. Whilst not a viable option, and despite much talk about transformation, business as usual remains a very likely scenario, meaning that we have to become far more effective in understanding where opportunities for transformation lie and what it will take to respond to them. And that is what the IIASA ISC initiative is intended to support. Within the above context, the 4 themes of the IIASA ISC consultation were distinguished as follows: governance, science systems, energy, and food. The guiding principles and key elements for the recovery process emerging from the consultations are: humanity has unleashed extreme, multiple, and compounding risks upon itself, which we must prepare for, including building resilience in dealing with non-linear system outcomes. We must address these risks through systems thinking, with an emphasis on delivering multiple dividends. The focus should shift towards resilience and sustainability based on equity and justice as essential foundations of future economic, social, and environmental development, as mirrored in the 2030 Agenda. Collaboration, transparency, fairness, and evidence-informed policymaking are critical ingredients. The past few months have also shown outstanding examples of individual and community-based initiatives, projects, and programs, bringing new actors to the forefront who engage as global citizens whose response is shaped by their local contexts. So turning to the thematic headlines and highlights, the consultation with governance found that current governance arrangements are inadequate to protect global and local commons. COVID-19 has shown that socio-ecological trends bring us to a world that is increasingly risk-prone, in addition to being unequal and unsustainable. Learning how intertwined human and natural systems are and how a local threat can quickly become a global crisis, the consultations with leading experts, advisors, and policymakers have shown that realizing sustainable development is an imperative to reduce risk, build resilience, and secure long-term development gains. Areas of action and transformation suggested from the governance consultations include A, reforming and repurposing global institutions to enhance global governance in an ever riskier world. An international system based on specialized agencies, all competing for resources, is increasingly unfit to respond to today's interconnected problems. B, boosting awareness and understanding of compound and systemic risks across governance arrangements at all scales is one key area of transformation needed to meet today's global and complex challenges. C, strengthening governance in national systems by making systemic resilience and sustainability a core collective government priority. Accountability and transparency provisions have to be built into more integrated governance arrangements. D, building forward rather than back by ensuring shorter-term COVID recovery packages integrate sustained investments into SDGs and SDG-wide resilience and lead to longer-term transformations. 2, the consultation into science systems found that science systems are in urgent need of strengthening and reform. 5 major transformations are suggested to move the science system to a new frontier of agility, reliability, and policy relevance. One of the main challenges is to build urgently local institutional capacity for research and scientific advice where it is most limited. Areas for transformative action include A, strengthening transdisciplinary research and networking on critical risks and systems resilience at local, global, regional, and national levels. B, enhancing the diffusion of scientific knowledge within the science system. C, improving the quality and efficacy of the science policy interface at national, regional, and global levels. D, enhancing communication of scientific knowledge, public understanding, and trust in science. E, increasing the capacity of the science system to respond in a more agile fashion to challenges emanating from a global crisis while simultaneously ensuring the quality and rigor of science output. 3, the consultation into energy found that COVID-19 reinforced how energy should be considered as an enabler, and therefore, along with the greening of energy supply, energy demand reductions must be aggressively sought through interventions in the consuming sectors. COVID-19 has revealed multiple vulnerabilities, including the direct and indirect implications for the demand for and growth of clean energy. 3 areas of transformative action with game-changing implications for energy could substantially contribute to climate and sustainable development goals while building a greater resilience in the energy system. A, reinventing urban spaces, infrastructure, and mobility. We have seen the potential of remote working, digitalization, innovations in business models, redesign of workspaces and uses, and the creation of an enabling environment for reorganizing urban spaces and facilities, including buildings and roads. B, redirecting consumption of goods and services through the design of incentive and regulatory systems that would advance a circular and sharing economy with active citizen engagement. And C, advancing a decentralized and locally resourced energy system accompanied by aggressive energy efficiency. 4, the consultation on food security found that the humanitarian and socioeconomic crisis triggered by the pandemic revealed multiple systemic and structural vulnerabilities and interdependencies embedded in our current food systems. The evolution of food systems has largely been driven by efficiency concerns. The recovery process should be focused on counterbalancing efficiency with an emphasis on resilience and equity to ensure the capacity of food systems to deliver food and nutritional security to the most vulnerable. We must reconfigure supply chains and trade dependencies based on an evaluation of their likely capacity to absorb and adapt to socioeconomic and environmental shocks. We must expand the benefits, reach, and duration of social safety nets and allow people employed informally a pathway to join social security structures to mitigate the impact of future unemployment/crisis situations. The areas for action and transformative change include A, reorient food systems architecture from increased production and efficiency to resilience and equity. B, making human and planetary health concerns an integral component of food systems. We have to shift towards affordable, healthy, and environmentally sustainable diets, transferring costs to unhealthy and unsustainable diets. C, facilitating access to innovative and technology diffusion and the acceleration and upscaling of sustainable practices. So in conclusion, COVID-19 reminds us we live in a non-linear, complex world of interdependence between natural and human systems. This pandemic is a warning. We need to step away from business as usual into new transformative pathways that get us on track to reach the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement commitments. And we need to become better prepared and more resilient to protect ourselves from future systemic shocks at all levels of global governance. The COVID-19 response has shown that some policymakers can act quickly, and populations have shown that decisive individual action can lead to a new collective consciousness to mitigate risk and enable living within planetary boundaries. We could call this an emergent collective consciousness, a philosophy of global citizenship that ensures we develop safety nets and resilient systems that address the ambition of a just and equitable global society. Transformations are within reach, but require global collaboration and fact-based decision-making. We want to use our knowledge gained through the consultations and the pandemic experience to emphasize the importance of developing a global coalition of the willing to strengthen our ability to develop a resilient approach to collective action in the face of future compound risks. Pursuing the required transformations will require new types of partnerships between governments, civil society, the public, and the private sector.
But the merit of these consultations was not to concentrate on the negative effects which the pandemic is causing across all the regions of the world, but rather to see this as an extraordinary opportunity for innovations and transformations. These consultations aimed at shining a light on the lessons learned during the past 5 months by preserving the positive and mitigating the negative. Many things have been revealed during this period. The inadequacy of our governance systems, the unequal impacts that the pandemic is causing, particularly on the poor and the weak systems for predicting, preventing, and addressing risks. This includes the inadequacy of safety nets for weathering the crisis. And most importantly, it has made noticeably clear the importance of international cooperation in science, innovation, and technology, areas where there is a major divide among the rich and the poor countries. Addressing the challenges that COVID-19 has brought requires multidisciplinary approaches and solutions that require societies to work together. It requires global citizenship as our mindset in our actions and reflected in our values. And policymakers need to design their policies based on science. Strengthening the system.
We are living in challenging times, and we need facts more than ever. Real facts about real problems. climate change, COVID-19, conflict, poverty, hunger, and loss of jobs and biodiversity. Not least, we need facts that connect the dots between these challenges. We must be conscious of these connections, and we have to act on the facts. If science is to evolve from being a provider of knowledge to a provider of solutions, we need policymakers who listen. Transformations within reach is thorough and thought-provoking. It is an excellent example of the scientific community's commitment to strategic collaboration in order to advance the use of evidence in global policy, discourse, and action. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it is the following. Collective human behavior matters. Science matters. Governments matters. And compassion matters.
Even in the midst of COVID-19 storm, science, technology, and innovation funding should remain a priority to ensure that countries, especially the developing countries, are prepared and ready for new ways of life post-COVID-19. The 2020 UNCTAD policy brief on science, technology, and innovation emphasizes the need for governments to continue these investments during the period of COVID-19. However, investments alone will not be enough, and we also have to ensure agile and enabling policy frameworks are in place. Therefore, platforms such as the IIASA ISC Bouncing Forward Sustainability post-COVID-19 play an important role in knowledge and information brokerage as we seek to address key societal challenges such as food and energy security. We live at a time of technological change that is unprecedented in its pace, scope, and depth of impact. Harnessing that progress is the surest path for the international community to deliver on the 2030 Agenda for People, Peace, and Prosperity. Frontier technologies hold the promise to revive productivity and make resources available to end poverty for good, enable more sustainable patterns of growth, and mitigate or even reverse decades of environmental degradation.
From the business sector, there is no intent nor viable route to return to business as usual. We need to build forward better. And in order to do that, we need to transform the systems in which we all operate. The focus in those transformations has to be on resolving climate change, avoiding further loss of nature and actually having a positive impact on nature. And last, but certainly not least, taking a hard look at inequality and improving the situation there. As I said, this will require system transformation. Against those science-based targets, we need to deploy business capabilities in innovation, in developing new technology solutions, but also, as Mary said, in changing the business models. And last but not least, business needs to deploy its capabilities to quickly scale up those solutions, new technologies, and new business models. But last, and certainly not least, essential actually, we need to attack the economic system itself. In the world of business, we're saying the days of shareholder capitalism are behind us. We can no longer reach a build forward better economy if we continue to only optimize the financial capital. We must integrate natural capital and social capital into what we call performance. The cost of capital for more sustainable businesses should be lower than that for unsustainable businesses.
We at IIASA feel strongly that the democratization of science is critically important in order for the science agenda to take its rightful place in the international landscape. If citizens don't understand why evidence is important and why scientific investigation is going to add value to our decision-making and to our policy-making process, politicians will discard and ignore evidence as long as society allows them to do so. And it's important that society needs to hold them accountable, and that requires an informed citizenship that can engage with that. I'd also like to inform you that our plan together with IIASA is to continue this work way beyond the initial publication of the key findings to ensure that we continue strengthening our work in terms of making sure that these transformations we're talking about become a reality for us.